Old School RuneScape was created using a backup of the game from August 10th, 2007. What would happen if Jagex went with a different backup version? To be specific, one from exactly a year later on August 10th, 2008. In today's video, we explore all the differences between the two backups and what features would exist and what wouldn't. Before I get started, I want to give a huge thank you to Lord Gozer 2 on Reddit for creating the post that this video is based off of. I've linked his Reddit posts in the description if you'd like to check them out. I also made a previous video based off another post of his about what Old School would look like if the backup was from 2006. The link to that should be on screen now and also at the end of the video. Anyway, with all that being said, let's get started. Before we jump into the actual game, let's take a look at the website. This is a huge nostalgia burst for me personally because this is almost exactly what it looked like when I first started playing RuneScape back in 2008. I honestly really miss the layout of this website because it's way easier to navigate than the current one for RuneScape 3, and in my opinion is a little bit more visual appealing than Old School's. But then again, that really just boils down to personal preference. Moving forward is the amazing login screen that gives you views of some of RuneScape's most famous places. As you can already guess, the graphics on this login screen look a little bit different. That's because RuneScape HD was released on July 14th, 2008, just a few months before this theoretical backup exists. Finally, hopping in game, you'll notice that you don't start on Tutorial Island. On the same day HD was released, Jagex also introduced a tutorial quest called Learning the Ropes. The quest involves helping a white knight named Sir Vant kill a three-headed dragon in the cellars of Lumbridge? As Lord Gozer notes in his post, this tutorial was not well received at all, and as a result, after 2 months, it was removed and Tutorial Island was reinstated. To be honest, I'd imagine if Jagex did go with the 2008 backup, they would most likely have re-added Tutorial Island before the game even launched. Old School just really wouldn't be Old School without what I'd consider one of the most famous places in the game. Moving on, Old School would have another skill available for players to train. The summoning skill was released all the way back on January 15th, 2008. More or less, players have the ability to temporarily summon pets that can help them with a variety of things. Those things range from storing items, skill boosts, and even helping you out in combat. The main reason I believe summoning hasn't already been introduced to Old School is due to how drastically it affected combat. It's been straw polled in the past on stream with a near 50-50 split on if it should be introduced. Chances are we'll never see it added to Old School, at least not without a lot of major changes. Now for something that I think we can agree the large majority of the community would absolutely hate is both the trade limit and no PvP allowed in the wilderness. To explain them really basically, these were updates used to try and prevent real-world trading and discourage botting. They worked, but nobody really liked them. Starting with the trade limit, you could only trade a certain amount of wealth every 15 minutes. For non-members, they could only trade a disparity of 10k coins. This means if your friend is giving you an item worth 15k, he wouldn't just be able to trade it over to you, and you would have to add 5k of your own money for the trade to go through, or else it would go over the limit and be considered an unbalanced trade. Members had it a bit easier because they could increase this limit up to 60k by gaining quest points. Now, as I mentioned previously, the wilderness also didn't have PKing. Instead, Jagex just added revenants to the wilderness to give PKers something else to fight. Alongside revenants, they also released the Bounty Hunter and Clan Wars minigames, but as you'd expect, that didn't really work and everyone was still pretty upset. I would not be surprised if these updates were also reverted before the launch of this theoretical 2008 server. Just a month before these updates was the introduction of the Grand Exchange. I already know Old School would be so different if the GE was introduced right at the start rather than later down the line. The Grand Exchange actually didn't get added to Old School until 2 years after its launch. Some players, part of that nostalgic experience of Old School is because the GE just didn't exist. You couldn't easily buy every item for a quest in a matter of seconds. I feel like had the Grand Exchange existed when Old School launched, a lot of players would have progressed, especially in buyable skills, much faster. Up next, just a few months before the addition of HD, is the Fist of Gothics minigame. Lord Gozer notes that this minigame was really the start of bonus XP being introduced into RuneScape, with things like rune crafting and fishing gloves. These items led to things like sacred clay tools, and even eventually bonus XP weekends. the latter being something Old School has never had in its half-decade of existence. Moving on, rather than Neve existing as a Slayer Master, we'd instead have Simona. Simona was introduced on June 5th, 2008, alongside the Slayer helmet and Slayer points. In order to unlock Simona as a Slayer Master, you'd have to complete the Smoking Kills quest, as well as have at least 90 combat and 35 Slayer. Just a few months before this, the Stronghold of Player Safety was introduced. I remember spending a lot of time here as a new player. It was actually one of my first experiences with the game because my friend who introduced it to me was there pretty much all the time. There's not too much to say about this place besides the fact that you would get 10k, safety gloves, and the Safety First emote. Anyway, this more or less covers all the main updates that happened during this period. A few I haven't mentioned are ZMI and the Aurania Altar, Loot Share, the Assist System, and Chaos Tunnels. Other than that, the Runecrafting Guild and the Great Orb Project were released 2 days after this theoretical backup on August 12, 2008. Chances are if a 2008 server ever did go live, these would be implemented pretty quickly. So, thank you all so much for watching this video. I know we covered a lot of information, so just as I said at the beginning, I've included Lord Gozer 2's Reddit post about it in the description. I highly suggest giving it a look, as well as the timeline comparison between RuneScape and Old School. It displays when updates came out in each version of the game, and is really just kinda cool to look at. Before I go, however, as always, here's a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters. Your contributions really do help me out a lot. Anyway, drop a like, leave a comment, and I will see you in the next one.